Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something a little different. You're not falling asleep in your comfy bed, gently snuggled beneath a weighted blanket with your phone just within reach. Nope. Tonight, you're getting dropped, barefoot, barely clothed, and incredibly confused, into the rainy cobblestone alleys of Edo-Era Japan. It's wet. It's loud. It smells like boiled radish, damp hemp, and distant charcoal. You're cold, you're already kind of lost, and the day hasn't even properly started yet. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to the patter of rain on thin wooden slats overhead, except it's not a gentle, movie-style drizzle. It's the kind of relentless, sideways rain that turns narrow dirt lanes into trickling brown canals. Your roof, made of thatched straw and hope, is leaking directly onto your straw mat, which now smells like warm mildew and regret. You shift under your futon, which is basically a lumpy cotton pancake, and realize your foot is already wet. Awesome! Someone outside is shouting, probably a neighbor, and the words are too fast for you to follow, but the tone screams, "You're late and it's your fault." Welcome to 18th century Edo. You shuffle toward the sliding door, still in your sleep robe, let's generously call it linen adjacent. You try to slide open the door gently, but it sticks halfway with a wet SAKD. Behind it, rain, smoke from morning cooking fires, and a steady stream of people already beginning their daily hustle. You're standing there, half asleep, while a child walks by balancing 2 buckets of rice water like it's nothing. Meanwhile, your straw sandals are already soaked before your second step. They squish with each motion, suctioning to your feet in the most disturbing way possible. You consider going barefoot, but then remember you saw something that looked like a frog with fangs near the canal yesterday. No thanks. One mainstream historical fact to ground this: Edo, modern-day Tokyo, was the largest city in the world in the 1700s. Over 1 million people crammed into a web of wooden buildings, narrow alleys, and waterways. The city was a marvel of organized chaos. And that chaos becomes especially flavorful when it rains. Because here's a lesser-known tidbit: Edo roofs weren't exactly waterproof. Not even for the rich. Clay tiles helped, sure, but most commoners had layers of straw, bark, or even thin wooden planks. The concept of dry indoors was aspirational. You grab a reed broom to swat some bugs off your mat. Yes, even the bugs are damp. And try to think about breakfast, or at least some kind of dry corner to gather yourself. But outside, the street is already alive. Vendors are calling, dogs are barking, and someone's trying to move a cart through the knee-deep mud while shouting at you to move. You sidestep into a puddle. Of course. Now, if you're wondering whether people back then had some kind of weather-friendly outerwear, the answer is a soft sort of. You could wrap yourself in a straw raincoat, called a mino, which is basically a wearable haystack. Functional, sure, but you'll look like you're cosplaying as a pile of autumn leaves. You try to throw one on and instantly regret it. It's heavy, smells like wet horse, and doesn't bend the way you think fabric should. Walking in it feels like being in a full-body loofah. You try to follow the morning crowd, but your sense of direction is wildly unprepared for Edo's twisty streets. See, most modern cities are laid out on grids. Edo is laid out like someone spilled ink on a map and decided that was good enough. Streets were deliberately confusing to slow down invading armies. Joke's on you, it works on tourists too. Your destination? You're not sure yet. Maybe the well, maybe the public bathhouse if you can sneak in early, or maybe just someone's shop awning to cower under. But you're learning fast, everything costs something, and you currently own a wet broom and 1 slimy coin. Historians still argue whether daily life in Edo was relatively egalitarian or a brutal hierarchy disguised by politeness. Some scholars paint it as a thriving, semi-functional society with a stable merchant class and intricate systems of mutual aid. Others focus on how rigid social ranks locked people into roles they couldn't escape. All you know right now is that your neighbor, a toothless tofu vendor named Jen, will not stop judging you with his eyes. You attempt a cheerful nod. He narrows his. Maybe this is a good time to point out, people here bathe daily. Cleanliness is tied to moral virtue. So your rain-drenched, half-slept, crooked sandal self is already a walking red flag. Someone mumbles "bake mono" under their breath. That means ghost. Great. You're now officially the scary foreigner haunting breakfast hour. The rain shows no sign of stopping. Your mino drips steadily. A paper lantern flickers out beside a noodle store, and you hear the vendor curse as he rushes to relight it. He glances at you, his gaze says, "Don't loiter." You nod as if that helps and slink toward the canal. The mud pulls at your sandals like it wants them for keeps. As you shuffle along, you hear the rhythmic clack of wooden clogs, jeter, coming up behind you. You try to speed up. Your sandals betray you. You wobble, slip, and recover, only to slam your shoulder into the side of a low-roofed shop. The shopkeeper inside gives you a look that says, "And now my whole day is ruined because of you?" You apologize in every language you know. He grunts and pulls down a bamboo screen between you. Rainwater runs down the back of your neck. Your stomach growls. A rooster somewhere crows late, which somehow feels mocking. The entire city smells like burnt soy sauce, wet bark, and charcoal smoke. And you, lucky visitor, are about to learn how long one day can truly be. You know how you sometimes complain when the bathroom line at your favorite cafe is too long, or when the toilet paper roll is tragically empty? Yeah. Forget all that. Because in Edo, even finding a place to go is a quest with more plot twists than a samurai drama. You start the search with optimism, or maybe it's just desperation. The cold rice water you had last night is threatening to make a surprise exit. But where are the toilets? Not in your leaky hut. Not tucked conveniently behind a convenience store. No. You follow the gentle curve of a narrow alley and notice a low wooden structure near a public well. A line of children is filing in and out like it's just another stop on the morning routine. Bingo! You approach with caution, trying to look casual. But the smell hits first. It's like hot turnips, wet rope, and something that once dreamed of being fertilizer. This is a benjo, the Edo equivalent of a public latrine. And it's basically a large wooden shed built over a shallow, shared cesspool. No privacy partitions. Just a few plank seats with cutouts, arranged communally. Some of the holes are very close together. You gulp. Now here's a mainstream historical fact to flush into your mind. Edo's sanitation system was actually quite ahead of its time. Waste from public toilets was collected and sold as fertilizer to nearby farmers. Yep, human waste was a commodity. They called it night soil, and there was a whole profession, night soil men, who transported it by the bucket. So technically, you're sitting in economic potential. But at the moment, that's not helping your nerves. You're squatting awkwardly, trying to avoid touching anything, while someone else chats 2 feet away like this is a picnic. No toilet paper, of course. Your options? A wooden stick with a soft end called a chigi, or, if you're truly unlucky, old paper scraps or leaves. You choose the stick. It's colder than expected. You don't want to talk about it. Just as you think the worst is over, a loud splash from the cesspool makes you leap an inch. One kid snickers. Another points out that you're using it wrong. Using what wrong? There's no user manual. You shuffle out, red-faced and more confused than when you entered, and rinse your hands awkwardly with a trickle from the communal water basin. The girl next to you points out that's for ceremonial hand-washing only. Of course it is. A quirky tidbit to distract you. Some temples in Edo actually kept toilet spirits at bay with tiny shrine charms. If your business was particularly unlucky that day, maybe you forgot to pay respects to the Benjogami. Yes, the toilet gods were real. And maybe, just maybe, they're mad at you right now. You attempt to pull yourself together, heading back into the rain-soaked streets with a resolve to never again take indoor plumbing for granted. But there's no time to dwell. Your host, let's call him Ichiro, expects you to help with morning chores, and that involves hauling water, sweeping the walkway, and trying not to break any heirlooms. You are 0 for 3. While dragging a heavy bucket down a stone path, you pass another set of public toilets, this one for the wealthier crowd. Fancy, elevated, with sliding partitions. A local tells you it's for the samurai class only. Apparently, even relieving oneself is a matter of rank. Historians still argue whether Edo's strict class divisions created stability or just locked everyone into place. Sure, the streets weren't exactly exploding with violent revolts, but if you were born a commoner, you stayed a commoner. Even your bathroom breaks had a caste system. You look at your wet sandals and know exactly where you stand. You continue down the alley, shoes squeaking softly. The rain hasn't stopped. A vendor calls out the price of sweet potatoes. You're too broke and too damp to care. Somewhere, a cat yowls under a porch, and a man in a full rain cloak sneezes dramatically. The scent of vinegar and pickled radish fills the air. It should be comforting. It's not. A shout catches your attention. An older woman is berating someone in the middle of the street. You squint and realize it's you. Apparently, you stepped on a corner of her property. A square of road that technically belongs to her family's noodle cart. You back away, apologizing. She throws a soggy daikon at your feet as a warning. You duck into a narrow alcove to regroup. Your clothes cling to your back. You think about your soft mattress at home. You think about plumbing. You think about how your dignity is currently floating somewhere in a nearby sewer. Then, like a divine sign, you spot it, another public restroom. Hidden behind a cluster of trees near a shrine, it's quieter, better built. You dash toward it, filled with hope, only to skid to a halt as you read the brush-painted sign, closed for cleaning. Of course it is. Edo wants you to suffer. A kid walks by eating a skewered rice dumpling, grinning with all the wisdom of someone who's figured this place out. You envy him. He probably knows where all the good toilets are. You want to ask, but he vanishes down a side street too quickly. You resign yourself to a long day of damp discomfort. The morning bell from a nearby temple tolls, echoing over the rooftops. People shuffle past you without a glance. You are no longer a tourist. You are a survivor. A very wet, slightly humiliated, sleep-deprived survivor. And breakfast hasn't even happened yet. The rain has soaked you down to your ancestral bones. Your stomach is making sounds that could scare away minor spirits. It's officially time to hunt for breakfast, not grab it. Hunt. Because in Edo, nothing is drive-through, and breakfast is more of a philosophical concept than a guarantee. You follow the scent of smoke and charred something. It leads you past stalls with paper lanterns swaying in the drizzle. People are squatting under awnings, slurping soup or tearing into rice balls. You try to play it cool as your stomach snarls like a cornered raccoon. That one vendor looks promising, a short man with wild eyebrows grilling fish over a clay brazier. You approach. He doesn't smile. You point at something vaguely fish-shaped. He holds up 2 fingers. You hand over your last 2 coins and receive a small, leaf-wrapped lump and a stare that says, "Don't ask for change." You peel it open, a triangle of cold rice, some pickled plum, and a sliver of grilled mackerel that smells intense. You take a bite. It's smoky, salty, and alarmingly crunchy in places you didn't expect crunch. The rice is sticky but cold, clinging to your fingers like it misses you. You chew, slowly, and wonder if this is breakfast or a test of willpower. A mainstream historical fact to ponder as you suffer: breakfast in Edo typically included rice, miso soup, and pickles, often with grilled fish if you were lucky. It was eaten early, usually before the first work bell rang. Meals were simple, seasonal, and mostly vegetarian for the common class. Meat? Forget it. Not unless you were ill, wealthy, or a stray cat with connections. You find a dryish corner under a temple eve and sit. Around you, people are eating without complaint. A man next to you slurps his soup with impressive volume. Another peels apart dried daikon like it's fine cheese. You nibble your fermented plum and try not to wince. It tastes like a dare. A salty, sour, centuries-old dare. Then, a puff of smoke blows in your direction. You turn to see another vendor lighting his morning fire with twisted straw and a pile of damp wood. The smoke curls through the street, turning everything ghostly and gray. Your kimono, which is already damp, is now infused with eau de burnt oak and possibly sardine. Congratulations, you smell like 8 a.m. in the fish district. You stand, brushing rice off your sleeve, and head toward a larger plaza. It's a market area with more food options, or at least you hope. The cobblestones are slick with rain, and the air is full of chatter. An old woman is selling steamed buns from a bamboo basket. You make eye contact. She nods. Hope swells in your heart. Then a samurai walks up and takes 3 buns without speaking. She bows. He walks away. You ask for one. She shrugs. Sold out. You consider rage buying her last pickled turnip, but your pride has taken enough hits this morning. Quirky fact break: some Edo households kept their fire going constantly, not just for warmth but to prepare dried fish and smoky tea. This resulted in homes and clothes smelling like a mix of ash, miso, and roasted seaweed. It was a scent considered normal, even comforting. You're just not there yet. You wander toward a communal cooking area, a corner of the neighborhood with stone stoves and low tables. It's like a shared kitchen but with more judgment. Families gather to heat leftovers, boil rice, and gossip aggressively. You try to look like you belong. You sit by the fire. Your wet straw sandals hiss faintly as they steam. A woman offers you something warm, a bowl of miso soup with greens and a slice of tofu that jiggles with ominous enthusiasm. You bow deeply. She laughs. You're unsure if it's kindness or pity, but you don't care. You sip. It's hot, earthy, and exactly what your soul needed. Where's your home? She asks. You lie. Over there, you say, vaguely. She hums. Haven't seen you. You pretend to cough. She doesn't believe you. But she lets you finish the soup. Historians still argue whether Edo's tight community systems created warmth or surveillance. On one hand, neighbors helped each other. On the other, they also reported suspicious strangers faster than you can say foreigner in damp socks. You're starting to understand both sides. You finish the soup, bow, and thank her profusely. She waves you off. Stay out of the alleys, she warns. Too much flooding. You nod solemnly. You're not sure what you'll do next, but at least your stomach has stopped trying to eat itself. As you walk away, you pass another group eating near a cart. They are laughing, tearing into grilled sweet potatoes and sharing gossip about a kabuki actor's rumored affair. You slow down to eavesdrop. They glance at you. One guy gestures toward your robe, whispers something, and they all laugh harder. You look down. Your robe has come partially untied. You are one soggy sneeze away from flashing half of Edo. You quickly adjust, trying not to die inside. One of the group tosses you a charred sweet potato with a wink. Foreigners need snacks too, he says. You bow in thanks, again. You are now the living embodiment of humble gratitude. It's still raining. The city is still steaming. Your clothes still smell like fire and embarrassment. But your belly is slightly warm. And for the first time today, you think, maybe you'll survive until noon. Maybe. Rainwater is now a permanent part of your personality. It sloshes in your shoes, streaks your sleeves, and runs down your back like it paid rent to be there. But you can't stand still forever. The city doesn't care that you're soggy and mildly traumatized. Edo moves on. And right now, it's time for work. Well, not your work. You're a glorified guest/accidental time traveler with no actual job, but you've been assigned to help out. Which in Edo means hauling, cleaning, and trying not to offend anyone with your very existence. Ichiro, your host, tosses you a woven basket. It's heavy. Inside are cleaning rags, a broom made of tied twigs, and a shallow wooden scoop. We clean the gutters, he says, with all the enthusiasm of someone announcing a surprise funeral. Start near the river. You follow him down narrow lanes where water spills off rooftops in elegant arcs. It would be pretty, if not for the ankle-deep sludge in the gutters. You take one look at the mess and instantly miss your vacuum cleaner. Welcome to labor, Edo style. Let's lay down a mainstream historical truth. Edo was one of the largest cities in the world by the 18th century, over 1 million people. With that many humans crammed into a wooden metropolis, cleanliness was crucial. Streets were swept daily. Waterways were maintained with the help of neighborhood cooperatives. Fire prevention and hygiene were everyone's business. Which brings us back to you, standing knee-deep in a gutter puddle, trying to scoop soggy leaves and not think too hard about what that squishy thing was. You gag. Ichiro chuckles. He's having a great time. Probably hasn't seen someone slip on algae and fall into a pile of cabbage stalks in a while. You soldier on, sweeping water toward a drain, trying to avoid direct eye contact with floating mystery blobs. It's hard work. Your arms ache. Your back protests. Your hair, already damp, is now decorated with street grit. A passing child asks if you're a ghost. You don't answer. Maybe you are. Quirky tidbit? Some wealthier neighborhoods in Edo actually employed yakurai, or professional name cleaners. These guys didn't clean the streets, they cleaned reputations, handling gossip, debts, and social mishaps. You, unfortunately, have no such handler. Your public image right now is Mud Monster. Ichiro signals a break. You sit on an overturned bucket, panting. The street has a vague smell of pickled turnips and disappointment. A shopkeeper brings out tea. You sip it gratefully, even though it's bitter enough to remove paint. You glance around. On either side of the street, wooden buildings press close. Shops below, homes above. A paper merchant waves from a second-story window. Someone is airing futons out the window like they're auditioning for a mattress ballet. The rain has eased slightly. People emerge with straw capes and hats like walking stacks of noodles. Just as you're beginning to feel 1% human again, Ichiro nods toward the bucket. Next, we scrub the alley shrine. You look at him. Then at the shrine, tucked between two buildings. It's only waist-high, but the stone base is green with moss and bird droppings. You sigh and pick up your brush. Scrubbing a shrine in the rain is not a glamorous task, but it is weirdly meditative. The rhythmic scrape of brush on stone, the occasional bell from a distant temple, it starts to lull you into something like a trance. For a few minutes, you forget your soggy underclothes and aching calves. You just scrub. Historians still argue whether Edo's neighborhood systems were a form of social cohesion or subtle control. These chinai were tight-knit, semi-autonomous communities. They organized cleaning, festivals, patrols, and also kept detailed records of who did, or didn't, contribute. Miss your shrine duty? Everyone knows. You finish the shrine and sit back on your heels. It looks better. Less tragic. Ichiro nods approvingly. He offers you a dumpling. It's cold, but right now it tastes like victory. Then, of course, drama strikes. A voice yells down the street. You and Ichiro turn just in time to see a wooden cart will pop off, sending a mountain of radishes tumbling into the gutter. A woman shrieks. Two kids cheer. A dog darts in and grabs a vegetable like it's just won the canine lottery. Ichiro shouts and runs to help. You follow, slipping twice but managing to grab an escaping turnip like a hero. You and Ichiro work with the cart's owner to lift and reattach the wheel. Everyone's shouting instructions. No one's really listening. It's beautiful chaos. In the end, the cart is fixed, the radishes mostly rescued, and you are now fully covered in mud and radish juice. A bystander claps politely. You bow. You don't know why. You return to Ichiro's shop/home and rinse off in a shallow wooden tub filled with lukewarm rainwater. It's not a bath. It's a public health gesture. You still smell like radish, but now it's faintly floral. As you wring out your sleeves, Ichiro offers you a seat and a fresh cloth to dry your hands. His warming rice cakes by the fire. You sit in silence, staring into the flames, heart still thumping from the turnip incident. A light rain taps the roof. Somewhere nearby, a flute plays a soft melody. The rice cakes sizzle. And for a fleeting moment, despite the grime and cold and chaos, you feel oddly peaceful. It won't last, of course. But it's something. You take a bite, and it tastes like everything good and simple: warmth, carbs, and survival. But just as you're beginning to think you've earned a rest, Ichiro stands. Time for the bathhouse, he says. You pause, mid-chew. Didn't we just bathe? He gives you a look. That wasn't a bath. That was damage control. Now, it's time to cleanse properly, Edo style. You sigh, stand up, and try not to groan audibly as your legs protest. Off you go again, down the winding alleyways, dodging puddles and low-hanging laundry like a tired ninja. The bathhouse appears around the bend like a warm mirage. Wooden walls, faint steam curling from the cracks, and the sound of water sloshing and bodies moving. You hesitate. Public bathing isn't really your thing. But Edo has no room for modesty. Everyone shares the same wooden tubs, the same soap, the same awkward eye contact. You step through the sliding door into a cloud of steam and wet wood. The room smells like pine, soap, and that ever-present whiff of rice vinegar. Men line the benches, scrubbing vigorously with cloths and buckets. Kids splash water at each other until scalded. An old man snores in the corner like a retired walrus. Mainstream historical note here: Sento, public bathhouses, were essential to life in Edo. With most homes lacking private bathing areas, communal tubs became centers of cleanliness, gossip, and low-stakes social politics. You didn't just clean your body. You reaffirmed your place in the neighborhood's pecking order. You strip behind a low screen that hides approximately nothing. Everyone sees everything. No one reacts. You clutch your washcloth like it's armor and shuffle to the washing station. No showerheads here. Just wooden buckets and your own determination. You dump a bucket of warm water over your head, and it's instantly euphoric. The heat sinks into your shoulders, banishing the cold rain and grime. You scrub with a cloth that feels like it was designed by sadists, rough, no soap. Just you, water, and friction. Ichiro, seated beside you, sighs contentedly. Best part of the day, he says. You nod. Mostly because you're too focused on not inhaling soap suds. The man 2 spots down is humming. Another one is telling a story about a cat that supposedly defeated a snake. You're not sure if it's a metaphor, but the mental image is excellent. Now, for a quirky twist, some bathhouses in Edo offered scented bathing experiences. Herbal infusions of yuzu citrus or pine needles were dropped into the water during winter months. Supposedly, they improved circulation, warded off colds, and made you smell slightly less like fermented cabbage. There's no yuzu in this tub, though. Just heat, steam, and a dozen other people's body temperatures. Once you've scrubbed yourself to a state of pruned respectability, you ease into the main bath, a deep, communal wooden tub that's probably older than your country. The water is hot. Not just spade hot. More like, did someone boil this for ramen? Hot. You sink in slowly, biting back a yelp. Every nerve ending flares, then relaxes. You lean back against the edge, close your eyes, and try to pretend you belong here. It works, until someone beside you sneezes directly into the steam cloud. You shift discreetly. Bath etiquette is strict. No towel dipping, no splashing, and definitely no washing inside the soaking tub. You stick to the rules, mostly out of fear. The last thing you need is to be exiled for towel misconduct. Historians still debate whether Edo's obsession with cleanliness was rooted in Shinto purification rituals, Confucian orderliness, or just the universal human desire not to stink in close quarters. Likely all three. Either way, bathing wasn't optional. A dirty neighbor was a social hazard, and a fire risk, bizarrely. Clean people were calmer, less likely to knock over oil lamps. After about 10 minutes, you feel like a very clean dumpling. You rise, rinse off, and towel dry with a cloth the size of a handkerchief. Modesty? Overrated. You dress in a loner yukata and step outside, hair still damp, skin warm, senses dulled in the best way. Outside, the air is crisp. The rain has paused, leaving behind slick stones and that fresh-washed smell of earth and smoke. You and Ichiro walk side by side, not speaking. There's no need. You're clean. The world feels slightly less terrifying. You pass others returning from the bathhouse, women in patterned robes, children with damp bangs, a man whistling off-key. It's a procession of the freshly steamed. Everyone smells faintly of wood and soap and stories they didn't tell. As you return to the shop, Ichiro pulls out a small bottle. Sake, he offers. For warmth. You hesitate. He hands you a cup. It burns a little going down, sweet, warm, and dangerous. You sip slowly. Your fingers tingle. You sit outside for a bit, watching the mist rise from the rooftops. Someone is practicing shamisen in the distance, a lilting, melancholic tune that coils through the air like a ribbon of smoke. Edo is never silent. Not even at night. But in this moment, it's gentle. Then, in the far distance, you hear shouting. Something's gone wrong. Again. But that's not your problem yet. For now, you're warm, scrubbed, and swaddled in borrowed cotton. You're still not sure you'll survive a full day here. But you're starting to hope you might. You sleep like a collapsed parasol, crumpled, useless, vaguely damp. But the futon is softer than expected, the room smells of cedar and rice straw, and the ambient chorus of rain against the wooden eaves becomes the world's slowest lullaby. Until, of course, the rooster. That bird could give TED Talks on volume. You jolt awake in pitch darkness, convinced it's at least 10 a.m. It's not. It's pre-dawn, the time when ghosts are said to head home and bakers start swearing. Your body screams for more rest. Edo politely disagrees. You shuffle upright, limbs groaning like old hinges. Ichiro's already moving, folding up bedding with that quiet efficiency only morning people and serial killers possess. He hands you a damp cloth. Wipe your face. We visit the market before sunup. Why? Because fresh is everything. Edo's markets open before the light breaks over the Sumida River. That's when the fish are still glistening, the greens still dew-kissed, and the rice merchants still vaguely sober. If you want decent tofu, you go early. And so, you go. Outside, it's still raining. Of course it is. The sky is a dull smudge, but the streets pulse with movement. Lanterns flicker like sleepy fireflies. Carts creak by. A man balancing bamboo poles over his shoulders passes you, the ends swinging like pendulums, one basket sloshing with water and eels, the other holding vegetables and what may be a chicken in denial. You trail Ichiro through the winding alleys until you emerge into a half-covered marketplace, already alive with shouting. It's not chaos, it's structured madness. Buyers and sellers call to each other over barrels of pickled radish, bundles of lotus root, live crabs, dried persimmons, and clay pots filled with miso. Here's your mainstream fact: Edo's urban food supply was a logistical miracle. The city relied on a web of rural suppliers, river transport, and early morning markets to feed over 1 million people daily. It wasn't just about food, it was about rhythm. Everyone moved with the pulse of supply and demand. You try to help. Ichiro tosses you a straw basket and rattles off instructions. You hear daikon and don't overpay, but that's about it. You wander into the fray. First stop, fish. The vendor eyes you suspiciously as you gesture awkwardly at some silvery slabs. He talks fast, assumes you understand, and before you know it, you've bought something possibly illegal and definitely pungent. Great. Next, pickles. You point at a barrel of something bright purple. The vendor laughs. Your tongue will change color, she says. You nod solemnly. She throws in a sample. Quirky tidbit: Edo residents were obsessed with pickles. Not just for preservation, but for flavor, texture, and even color. Purple shibazuke, yellow takwan, and crunchy nukazuke were daily staples. Some households boasted starter rice bran beds for pickling that were older than their children. You return to Ichiro, who inspects your haul. He raises one eyebrow at the fish, but doesn't throw it away, which feels like praise. Good enough, he says. Now, let's get your breakfast. That's when you meet the rice ball lady. Her stall is a cloud of steam and seaweed. She moves like a magician, hands sculpting hot rice, a flick of pickled plum in the center, a graceful wrap of nori. You watch, mesmerized. She hands you one. First one's free if you smile. You smile. It's not even forced. The rice ball is warm, salty-sweet, and vaguely holy. You'd follow this woman into war. As you chew, Ichiro pays a tofu vendor. The man hands over blocks so delicate they wobble like regrets. You cradle one in your arms like it's a baby bunny. Historians still argue whether Edo's dietary simplicity was a product of cultural restraint or just practical necessity. Meals were built around rice, miso soup, pickles, and small portions of fish or tofu. Meat was rare. Sugar was a luxury. But flavors were balanced with precision, and seasonal freshness was everything. You make one last stop at a tea vendor. The man hands you a small wooden cup. It smells grassy, sharp, alive. You sip and immediately feel like your cells are clapping. The tea is bitter, sure, but in a way that demands respect. Then, in classic Edo fashion, someone yells. A street performer begins drumming loudly on overturned buckets. A crowd gathers. A monkey in a tiny vest dances, completely unbothered by the rain. You blink. This is apparently normal. Ichiro watches, bemused. That monkey has better shoes than you. He's not wrong. As you head back, the sky brightens slightly, just enough to sketch the rooftops in gray and gold. The air smells of steam, soy sauce, and river mud. The streets are fully awake now. A boy runs past with a stack of newspapers. A woman adjusts her hairpins while walking. A cat watches you from a roof like it knows your browser history. You step over puddles, basket in hand, tofu still intact. You're soaked again, but the rice ball is keeping your morale afloat. Edo isn't trying to kill you today. It's just gently hazing you. Back at the shop, Ichiro nods. You're learning. You set down the fish with pride, ignore the purple pickle stain on your sleeve, and sit down to help prep the meal. There's no instant ramen here. You wash rice, slice radish, try not to cry while grating wasabi. Every step has a rhythm, and if you fumble it, Ichiro smacks your elbow with a chopstick. The meal, when it's done, is modest. Rice, miso soup, grilled fish, your suspicious purchase somehow redeemed, and tofu with scallions. It smells better than most of your modern takeout. You eat quietly, steam rising between you, chopsticks clicking against ceramic bowls. Outside, the rain begins again. Of course it does. The rain isn't letting up. If anything, it's getting bolder, testing your resolve, soaking through every fold of your yukata with a smugness only weather can get away with. You huddle under a narrow awning beside Ichiro, who's slurping tea like it's a competitive sport. He doesn't seem bothered. He never seems bothered. You, on the other hand, are beginning to resemble a soggy origami crane. Time for your next lesson, he says, standing. You groan. Is it napping? He smirks. Paperwork. Ah yes, when you dreamed of visiting the past, surely this was the highlight, drowning in Edo-Era bureaucracy. Ichiro leads you through winding alleys to a local magistrate's office, a Machibugisho, one of the hubs of administration that kept this rain-slicked metropolis running. The building itself is stately and wooden, with a slanted roof and guards standing like bored statues out front. You step inside and immediately regret it. The air is thick with incense, mildew, and something you're pretty sure is powdered ink. This is where things get serious. Magistrates were more than mere paper pushers. They were part judge, part mayor, part overworked complaint department. Every neighborhood was linked into this complex web of reporting and oversight, and everyone had some form of accountability to someone. Edo may have looked chaotic, but it ran on invisible gears, and paperwork was the grease. Mainstream historical note: the Tokugawa shogunate maintained astonishing control over its people through a dense network of local officials and village registries. Everyone was registered somewhere. Families were grouped into goningumi, 5 household units responsible for each other's behavior. If one person messed up, everyone caught heat. It was passive-aggressive utopia. You're handed a brush and a sheet of paper. Write your name, says the scribe. You freeze. Kanji. Of course. You attempt it anyway, drawing something that vaguely resembles a drunken squid. The scribe squints. Ichiro mutters, just say it's a regional dialect. You move to the next station, tax records. Apparently, Ichiro has decided you're now a semi-permanent resident of his neighborhood. To maintain appearances, you need to be filed as someone who contributes to society, which is generous, considering your main talents include sarcasm and not dying. The official asks for your trade. You stammer something about storytelling. He writes itinerant monk. Close enough. You then have to report your rice allotment. You have none. So he assigns you a grain value equivalent to breathless nuisance. At least, that's what Ichiro whispers. Probably joking. Maybe. And here's your quirky tidbit. Edo record-keeping was so detailed that officials recorded things like how many toothpicks a shop used, how long someone had lived at an address, and even the number of umbrellas stolen during a rainstorm. Paper wasn't wasted, it was weaponized. You're shown a ledger the size of a mattress. Pages filled with tidy characters line up like marching ants. A clerk is redrawing a map of the district by hand with a tiny brush and astonishing patience. You stare. This person has probably never known a typo in their life. Historians still argue, Ichiro murmurs, whether the rigid structure of Edo governance promoted harmony or just repressed individuality until people stopped noticing. You nod. Mostly to look smart. Suddenly, a disturbance. A merchant bursts in, soaked and furious, shouting about a stolen cartwheel. The clerk barely looks up. He writes something, stamps a slip, and hands it over. The man leaves, still muttering. Ichiro shrugs. Standard Edo morning. You're beginning to realize that survival here isn't about brute strength or even cleverness. It's about knowing which line to stand in and who to bow to. One wrong move, and you're publicly shaved, tattooed with shame symbols, or exiled to an island so remote it doesn't even have pickles. And you like pickles now. You're ushered into the records room, where shelves tower with scrolls, ledgers, and folded letters wrapped in twine. The paper smells like centuries. You help carry a stack across the room and immediately sneeze into it. Smooth. On one shelf, you spot a petition signed by an entire street's worth of residents. You squint. They're protesting a neighborhood samurai who lets his dog bark at night. Pages of beautifully written complaints, all about a dog. Bureaucracy is universal. You catch another oddity, a folder labeled umbrella infractions. Apparently, borrowing someone's umbrella and not returning it was a finable offense. The word borrowing is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. By the time you leave, your brain feels soggy in a way the rain can't compete with. You've signed things you didn't understand, bowed at people you've probably insulted, and been classified as a monk without a temple. Outside, the rain has found a second wind. You're greeted by the squelch of your own footsteps and the sudden realization that you've been given paperwork to keep. You cradle it under your robe like a sick bird. Ichiro, ever cheerful, says, "You did well." You look at him, hollow-eyed. "I miss hot baths." Good. That means you're settling in. As you head back to the shop, you pass other clerks with umbrellas balanced on shoulders, kids running errands with scrolls clutched in both hands, and an old woman arguing with a tax agent who looks ready to weep. The rain isn't the only thing wearing everyone down. Edo, you realize, is beautiful in its madness, but it expects a lot. It expects you to show up, to be clean, to register your presence, to not steal umbrellas, even if yours smells like pickled fish. You step over a puddle that may actually be a portal to another dimension and duck back into the shop. You hang the paperwork to dry by the hearth. One sheet curls like it's trying to escape. You know the feeling. Ichiro pours tea and tosses you a rice cracker. You bite into it without enthusiasm. It tastes like ink and survival. Still, you're not dead yet. Which is, by Edo standards, a pretty good day. The rain presses on, drumming steadily on the tiled roofs like it's trying to lull the entire city into a soggy trance. But Ichiro is having none of it. "Time to repay your karma," he says, tossing you a bundle of rags. "We're cleaning the shop." You blink. "The whole thing?" He raises an eyebrow. "You'd rather clean the latrines at the temple?" You grasp the rags. Cleaning, in Edo, Japan, isn't a quick sweep with a Swiffer. It's a sacred ritual, a spiritual practice, and an opportunity for back pain all rolled into one. And because Edo homes are mostly built from wood and paper, keeping things spotless is more than aesthetic, it's survival. Mold and rot are ever-present threats, especially on rainy days like this. So you start with the tatami mats, brushing them with the reverence of someone trying not to offend ancient floor spirits. They smell faintly of green tea and centuries of foot traffic. You move on to the wooden beams, wiping each one with your makeshift cloth, which quickly turns a color that could be described as haunted beige. Mainstream fact time. Tatami mats were a staple in most Edo homes, woven from rice straw and rush grass. Not only did they regulate temperature and provide cushioning, but they also conveyed status. More mats meant more prestige. Full tatami coverage was a luxury. Commoners often had just one or two. The front room is done. You stand, stretch, and hear a pop in your lower back that may require its own shrine. But before you can gloat, Ichiro hands you a bucket. Kitchen's next. Watch the tofu vat, it bites. Into the kitchen you go, where the floor is slick with steam and last night's fish ambition. You scrub. And scrub. At one point, you chase a cockroach the size of a toddler's shoe across a shelf. It escapes. You nod respectfully. See you at lunch. Here's your quirky tidbit. Edo residents used ashes and leftover rice water as cleaning agents. The starch from the water acted like a mild detergent, and the ashes helped deodorize. You try this. Your hands feel weirdly soft, but everything now smells faintly of breakfast. Ichiro joins you midway through, humming a tune that sounds suspiciously like it was invented just to annoy you. He starts dusting shelves with the speed of a man who's lost bets on how fast he can clean. You try to keep up, but he's a blur. At one point, he flicks a speck of dust off your nose. "You're improving," he says. "You almost look like you belong here." "Can I get that in writing?" "No. We're out of ink." You scrub, organize jars, stack bowls by size, and begin to understand why Edo shops always smelled so fresh despite the lack of air freshener technology. The philosophy here is simple: clean space, clean mind. Or at least clean enough not to offend your ancestors. Midway through dusting the shrine alcove in the corner, you pause. It's small, but ornate, featuring a modest statue of Jiz, protector of travelers and children. Someone's left a folded crane and a few beans as offerings. The soft glow of the nearby lamp gives it a warmth that's almost modern. Historians still argue whether Edo's devotion to cleanliness was driven more by Shinto beliefs in ritual purity or practical urban survival instincts. The truth, likely, is both. In a city so dense, where disease could spread faster than gossip, cleanliness wasn't just a virtue, it was policy. After a break involving lukewarm tea and a rice cracker you're beginning to suspect is older than you, Ichiro takes you upstairs. "Guest room," he says, opening a paper sliding door. It creaks ominously. The room is sparsely decorated, just a futon rolled in the corner, a window overlooking the garden, and a scroll on the wall that reads, "Even dust, when accumulated, becomes a mountain." You mutter, "You could have just written clean your room." He shrugs. "This version sells better." You sweep. You dust. You re-roll the futon. The paper window panels rattle gently with the breeze, and the view is unexpectedly tranquil. The rain has painted the garden in saturated greens, the moss glowing like it's plugged in. A tiny bird hops along the stones, pausing to shake droplets from its wings. You sit on your heels, just for a second. Breathe in that earthy petrichor and roasted barley scent wafting up from downstairs. For a moment, it almost feels meditative. Then the ceiling drips directly onto your knee. Time to mop. As you descend the stairs, you notice Ichiro has set out new cloths and a small pot of citrus peels. "To refresh the air," he says, catching your look. "You smell like boiled shoe." "Thank you for your honesty." By the time the shop is truly clean, the sun has pushed shy beams of light between the clouds, gilding the wood with warm hues. The whole building seems to sigh in contentment. You, meanwhile, are a tangle of muscle aches, damp sleeves, and spiritual clarity. You also realize, with mild horror, that your left sandal is missing. The rain took it. Classic Edo. You slump by the hearth while Ichiro brews more tea. "Same time tomorrow?" you ask. He smirks. "If you're still alive." Outside, a neighbor passes, glancing in. "Ah, your apprentice looks cleaner today," she calls. You wave weakly. "Your arms are jelly." "I think I might be one with the floor," you mumble. Ichiro hands you a cup. "Then stay there. Less for me to mop." You sip. The tea is hot, slightly bitter, and tastes exactly like victory. It's still drizzling the next morning, because of course it is. You step outside with one sandal, one soggy foot, and a quiet resentment for weather in general. Ichiro greets you with two things: a half-mended straw hat and the kind of grin that always means trouble. "We're going to the bathhouse," he says. You blink. Shouldn't we wait for the rain to stop? He claps you on the back. That is the bath. You'll blend right in. You shuffle after him, half expecting him to reveal a third surprise, like maybe he signed you up for sumo school. Instead, you join the steady stream of Edo-Eras carrying towels and little wooden buckets toward a low, wood-paneled building wrapped in steam. Inside the Sento, the air is thick with mist and the hum of polite conversation. Shoes off. Robes folded. Towel on head. You're handed a bar of soap that smells like barley tea and humility. Here's your mainstream fact. Public bathhouses were social hubs in Edo, Japan, and nearly every neighborhood had at least one. These weren't just places to get clean, they were the original coffee shops, therapy sessions, and neighborhood newsrooms rolled into one. Men, women, children, old folks, everyone came here, often daily, to wash and gossip. You're directed to a wooden stool beside a large washing area. Buckets slosh. Soap bubbles drift lazily through the steam. You lather up, pour water over your head, and realize this is the cleanest you've been in, well, since arriving. A man beside you casually tells you about his cousin's misfortune with a haunted turnip. You nod like that's perfectly normal. In Edo, it is. Ichiro, seated nearby, is humming again. You're pretty sure he only knows one tune. You whisper, "Isn't it weird being naked around strangers?" He shrugs. "Only if you let it be. Most folks are too busy worrying about their own butts to judge yours." Sage advice. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Edo bathhouses served sake while you soaked. Others rented cats, for comfort. You're not sure if that meant the cats joined you in the water or just sat judgment ally on the windowsill, but either way, it's very on brand. Once you're scrubbed within an inch of your existence, it's time for the soaking tub. A massive wooden cauldron of nearly boiling water steams like a dragon's teacup. You ease in with all the grace of a slow-cooked dumpling. Your skin immediately prickles. Your muscles unwind. You exhale something between a sigh and a groan. Across from you, two old women are comparing radish prices with the gravity of international trade. A child floats by like a serene manatee. And outside the fogged windows, the rain keeps drumming on. Historians still argue whether bathhouses reinforced communal harmony or just masked the deeper cracks of social inequality. After all, merchants and laborers soaked side by side. But once dry, they returned to their strictly ranked lives. Here, everyone's equal in the buff, but only for 15 steamy minutes. You lose all track of time. It's easy to do. Everything slows here, voices, thoughts, heartbeats. You feel like a human teabag. The hot water wraps you in a haze of weightless bliss, and for a moment, it doesn't matter that you're 400 years from home and allergic to squid. Eventually, Ichiro nudges you with his toe. Time's up. You'll melt. You step out, light-headed and red as a festival lantern. You towel off, dress slowly, and shuffle to the lounge area where people sip barley tea and nibble sweet bean cakes. Ichiro orders two. You inhale yours. It tastes like warm clouds and redemption. Outside, the drizzle has turned to a mist that dances in the morning light. The walk back is quiet. Edo is waking up, vendors sweeping storefronts, dogs barking at fish carts, a samurai carefully trying not to trip on a stone. The scent of grilling miso wafts through the air. Your hair is still damp. Your feet are still sore. But your soul? Squeaky clean. Back at the shop, Ichiro tosses you a fresh yukata. You'll need that later. For what? He grins. You'll see. You've learned to fear that phrase. But for now, you collapse onto a floor cushion and exhale into a soft, sleepy sprawl. The bathhouse glow is still clinging to your bones, and the world feels a little softer, a little slower. Until, of course, you remember you left your original clothes drying outside. And they are now somewhere on the street, waving gently in the breeze. Classic Edo. You're not sure what gives you away first, the crisp fold of your fresh yukata or the terror in your eyes, but Ichiro takes one look at you and says, "Don't worry. Festivals are easy. Unless someone throws mochi at you." You squint. "Mochi? Don't ask." It's afternoon now, and the drizzle has thinned into a kind of golden mist. The sun pokes through in watercolor swipes, and the city buzzes in a different key, faster, brighter. You hear music in the distance, flutes, shamisen strings, the low thump of drums like a heartbeat shared by half the neighborhood. You're going to a local matsuri, one of Edo's endless seasonal festivals. These weren't just for religious devotion, they were half block party, half spiritual insurance policy. Each festival honored a different kami, or spirit, and Edo had no shortage of them. If your district was prone to fires? Fire God Festival. Too much rain? Rice Spirit Party. Local river full of aggressive carp? Yep, there's a god for that too. Mainstream fact, Edo boasted over 1,500 festivals a year, yes, really. Some lasted days, complete with parades, puppet shows, and enough fried octopus to populate a small aquarium. For a city obsessed with order, the festival was an intentional unraveling. A socially sanctioned let loose. You're still trying to process this when Ichiro hands you a red headband. Put this on. It hides fear. You don't question him anymore. The streets are packed. Paper lanterns sway overhead, casting warm glows on stalls selling roasted chestnuts, candied plums, fish on sticks, and strange jelly cubes that jiggle with alarming commitment. Children dart past you with pinwheels. Drummers beat out a rhythm that rattles in your chest. It smells like soy, sweat, and joy. And then there's the mikoshi. It's a portable shrine, ornately decorated and carried by a very loud, very sweaty group of locals chanting in rhythm. You're shoved, lovingly, into the middle of them before you can object. Someone thrusts a shoulder under your arm. Ichiro appears beside you, laughing like this is all normal. The shrine lurches. You lurch. Your knees question every life choice. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some festivals in Edo featured competitive floats and dances so intense that people occasionally faked fainting just to be carried off with dignity. You consider it. Strongly. You march, chant, bounce with the rhythm of dozens of feet on ancient stone. The mikoshi sways. You sway. Someone steps on your good sandal. The gods are clearly testing you. The parade winds through streets like a living river. Shopkeepers toss confetti. Monks offer blessings. You pass a kabuki stage mid-performance. An actor in full makeup gives you a side eye so dramatic it could win an Oscar. You bow out of sheer reflex. Historians still argue whether festivals truly leveled social hierarchies, or simply let people cosplay equality for a day. After all, merchants might carry shrines alongside samurai, but the next morning? Back to bowing and bootlicking. Still, for now, in the din of laughter and flute music, you do feel like part of something bigger. Grimy, tired, slightly concussed, but included. At sunset, you break for food. Ichiro buys skewers of grilled eel glazed in sticky sweet sauce. Don't ask what it is. Just chew. You chew. It's not bad. Slightly mysterious. Smoky. Possibly sentient. Better than temple rice, right? You nod solemnly. Tell no one. Nearby, a storyteller gathers a crowd, spinning tales of ghostly cats and vengeful umbrellas. Yes, umbrellas. One, apparently, grows an eye and hops in revenge if thrown out too soon. You make a note to never throw out anything again. As darkness falls, the lanterns brighten. Fireflies drift between them like living punctuation. A group of dancers in patterned yukata swirl past, trailing laughter. You're handed a paper fan and find yourself caught in a circle of movement. Awkward, yes, but welcome. You glance at Ichiro, who's now trying to teach an elderly man to whistle using a cucumber. You decide not to ask. Finally, fireworks. They arc above the rooftops in blossoms of gold and green, reflections dancing on the canal. People gasp. Children shriek in delight. You duck instinctively at one loud crack, and Ichiro chuckles. First time? Understatement. The night ends with mochi. Just so much mochi. Soft, chewy, sometimes filled with beans, sometimes aggressively plain. You eat 3 out of politeness and quickly lose feeling in your jaw. A child hurls one at a passing rooster. The rooster wins. You limp home, legs jelly, ears ringing, kimono speckled with sparkler ash. But there's a smile tugging at your lips you didn't expect. Maybe it's the communal joy. Or maybe you're just relieved no one made you sing. Back at the shop, you collapse onto your futon. Ichiro tosses you a cloth to wipe off festival dust. Not bad, he says. You only screamed once. It was a big firework. He nods, approving. You've survived your first Matsuri. The gods might keep you yet. You mutter something in response, but you're already fading, the memory of the crowd, the music, and the scent of grilled eel curling around you like smoke. Tomorrow will be rainy again. It always is. But for now, you sleep. You wake to the sound of something gently snapping against your window screen. It's not rain this time, though that's still drizzling too, because of course. It's the edge of a paper kite, caught in a mild gust, fluttering like it has something urgent to say. Ichiro is already up, as always, chewing something that crunches far too loudly for this hour. Today, he says, you learn the secret art of doing nothing. You sit up, skeptical. Is this a trick? He shakes his head, solemn. It's rest day. Even the gods take naps. Edo life, for all its hustle, had its slow days, especially for those not directly chained to the rice fields or merchant routes. Townsfolk took pauses. Whether for religious observance, calendar holidays, or simply rain-induced apathy, a kind of sacred idleness crept in. You're about to enter one. Mainstream fact, Edo period calendars were lunar-based, meaning months began with a new moon, and people used a system of rokui to determine lucky and unlucky days. On especially unlucky days, many simply avoided big tasks. Why risk it? If the heavens said don't, Edo listened. You sip barley tea while watching the sky forget what color it wants to be. A neighbor's rooster gives a half-hearted crow. 2 cats argue on a roof. The world, quite literally, loafs. Ichiro drapes a cloth over his eyes and reclines on a porch mat. Try it, he says. The nothing. But make it intentional. You sit. Then lie down. Then shift. Then scratch. It's shockingly hard to do nothing with conviction. Quirky tidbit. Some Edo philosophers believed that too much action was spiritually destabilizing, and wrote odes to muddy leisure, a state of pleasant torpor likened to frogs in a rice paddy. You try to embody that. Mentally croak. Doesn't help. Eventually, your thoughts slow. You watch a spider repair its web like it's painting delicate, invisible lace. You count how many people pass by holding umbrellas with holes. More than you'd expect. You spot a child attempting to sell stones dressed as mini-gods. A surprisingly persuasive sales pitch. Ichiro murmurs, see? The city breathes different today. Just like us. It's true. Even the vendors are quieter. The noodle seller you've come to recognize by his shouty advertising has apparently lost his voice and now holds up a wooden sign instead. It somehow seems more elegant. Historians still argue whether this sort of idleness was truly chosen or just enforced by social limitations, lack of work, religious mandates, or simple resource management. But regardless of the cause, the result remains. A day without purpose becomes its own kind of poetry. You stretch. Somewhere nearby, someone plays a slow, sad tune on a shakuhachi bamboo flute. It floats through the damp air like steam, wistful, but not mournful. Like a sigh you didn't know you needed. Ichiro rolls over. You wanna go watch rice dry? You pause. Is that a euphemism? Nope. Literally rice. Drying. In baskets. Why not? You follow him to a rooftop where his aunt has laid out sheets of half-dried rice to catch the briefest bursts of sun. She nods as you sit nearby, and offers you a pickled plum so sour it rearranges your face. They both find this hilarious. You sit for hours, watching the clouds refuse to move, the rice slowly crisping into something less soggy, the world holding its breath. Below, two elderly men play Go, murmuring between moves. A dog curls up beside a fish barrel. Someone is painting a wall very slowly, as if savoring each brushstroke. Eventually, Ichiro nudges you. Feeling it yet? You nod, eyes half closed. I think I've become sediment. Good. You're almost Edo. Later, you wander the neighborhood, slowly, without direction. People nod at you, as though your unhurried pace confirms your integration. A child hands you a flower. A monk corrects your walking posture with alarming precision. You accept it all, too mellow to resist. A woman offers you roasted sweet potatoes from a cart. You bite in. Steam escapes like incense. It tastes like campfire and comfort. Back at the shop, you find yourself folding paper. Not origami, exactly. Just folding. Mindless, calming. You don't realize Ichiro's watching until he chuckles. I told you, he says. There's an art to it. You consider this. The Edo world, for all its rules and routines, knows the value of a pause. Of breath. Of sitting with your hands in your sleeves and your gaze half-lidded, watching the rain dot the ground in no particular pattern. It's easy to forget that survival isn't just about struggle. It's also about surrendering, at least once in a while, to the stillness. Especially when your sandals are still wet and your last pair of dry socks is now a pigeon nest. Tomorrow might be back to hauling firewood or dodging fermented soybeans. But for now, your only task is to listen. To feel. To be. You've mastered the fine, wet art of doing nothing in Edo. And, surprisingly, it feels like a victory. You dream of umbrellas. Hundreds of them, spinning in slow circles above you, each one leaking. You wake with damp hair and a crick in your neck, and for a moment you think, maybe I finally turned into a pickled plum. But no, you're still very human, very tired, and very much in Edo. Ichiro greets you with a small bucket, a scrub brush, and a look that says you've had too many naps lately. Time to clean the canal, he says, like it's a fun team-building exercise and not a borderline punishment. You don't protest. At this point, Edo could ask you to massage a shrine's feet and you'd probably say thank you. Today's adventure takes you to the neighborhood Horikawa, one of Edo's many man-made canals. These water channels cut through the city like watery veins, used for everything from irrigation to laundry to transporting goods. Oh, and garbage. Lots and lots of garbage. Mainstream fact, Edo's extensive canal system, fed by the Sumida River, was central to city life and commerce. Boats transported rice, lumber, fish, and more. The canals were so vital that a whole class of boatmen and dock workers formed around them, each with their own slang, customs, and pecking order. You arrive to find a crew of locals knee-deep in murky water, fishing out weeds, bottles, and what may or may not have once been a ceremonial fan. The smell hits you first, something between fermented kelp and broken promises. Ichiro hands you a stick with a hook. For the big floaters. You're knee-deep in mud within 5 minutes. It's cold. It's slippery. You're pretty sure a frog just laughed at you. Quirky tidbit, Edo had a recycling system. Really? Human waste was collected, sold, and used as fertilizer, so valuable that some landlords actually reduced rent in exchange for their tenants' night soil. That canal you're standing in? Yeah, probably part of that grand loop. As you scoop out a particularly unidentifiable mass, a boat floats by carrying 3 monks and what appears to be a caged monkey. You blink. No one else reacts. Edo continues to be profoundly unbothered by the surreal. You ask Ichiro, "So, how often do we clean this?" He shrugs. Whenever someone complains loud enough. Or a fish dies looking offended. It's backbreaking work. Your arms ache. Your back threatens a rebellion. You wonder, briefly, if this is why Edo people bathe so much, because half their lives are spent elbow-deep in questionable liquids. A neighbor woman brings sweet pickled radishes for the crew. You bite in and immediately tear up, not from emotion, but because your taste buds have been punched in the face. Still, you smile and nod like it's the best thing you've ever eaten. That's Edo manners. Historians still argue whether Edo's sanitation efforts were truly effective or just good intentions tangled in bamboo and bureaucracy. There are records of city ordinances requiring waste removal and anti-littering policies, but also plenty of stories about clogged drains, stinking alleys, and fish that glowed suspiciously in the dark. By mid-afternoon, you've developed a rhythm. Scoop, dump, slip, swear silently. Ichiro starts singing again. This time, you hum along. It's either bonding or delirium. You notice something shimmering at the bottom of the canal, something metal. You fish it out, half expecting buried treasure. It's a dented comb. Probably lost decades ago. But you pocket it anyway. It feels like a tiny victory. Later, you're rewarded with lunch, grilled rice balls and slices of lotus root. You eat sitting on a crate, pants soaked, skin speckled with canal grime, but stomach satisfied. Edo rewards even its filthiest with decent snacks. Nearby, a fishmonger argues with a samurai over the price of a half-dead eel. The eel wins by escaping. The samurai stares into the canal, deeply betrayed. As the sun begins to sink, casting long gold shadows across the muddy water, the cleanup crew calls it a day. The canal isn't pristine, but it's less haunted looking now. Your hands are blistered. Your shoulders ache. But strangely, you feel proud. You helped make the city breathe a little easier. Back at the shop, Ichiro plops down beside you and offers a cup of amazake, a sweet, slightly fermented rice drink that tastes like a warm hug if the hug was slightly tipsy. Not bad, he says. You didn't even fall in once. Came close. He smirks. That counts as Edo baptism. You sip slowly. Your fingers finally stop trembling. The rain has paused, as if taking a break just for you. Outside, someone plays a flute. Inside, your eyes begin to droop. You wonder how many others across Edo had the same day, knees muddy, hair wet, hearts just a little fuller. The city thrives not just because of the shogun or the samurai, but because of these small, unseen labors. The sweepers, the lifters, the ones who scrub away the grime so others can walk clean streets and believe in beauty. You think, maybe I'm not just surviving Edo anymore. Maybe, just maybe, you're part of it now. You wake to the smell of smoke. Not the alarming kind, no flames or screams, just the woody, almost sweet scent of charcoal curling through the floorboards. For a brief moment, you're convinced you've been transported to a campsite or maybe a really committed hipster's backyard grill. Then you remember, you're still in Edo, still slightly damp, and your legs feel like they were used to pound mochi overnight. Ichiro taps your shoulder. Time to try not dying. Again. Today, it seems, you're heading to the communal bathhouse, Sento. Which sounds relaxing, until you remember that privacy is about as rare here as a dry robe. Outside, the street smells faintly of rain and roasted chestnuts. A woman passes with a tray of steamed buns balanced expertly on her head. A cat glares at you from a roof. Edo is wide awake and mildly judging your walking posture. The Sento isn't far, a wooden building that breathes steam from its seams. You enter hesitantly, clutching a towel smaller than your dignity. Inside, the air is thick, warm, and full of conversation. Elders gossip in low tones, children splash with terrifying glee, and someone is humming a tune that may or may not be about pickles. Mainstream fact: public bathhouses were a fixture of Edo society. Most homes didn't have private baths, so locals visited Sento not just to clean themselves, but to socialize, relax, and yes, judge each other's scrubbing technique. You follow Ichiro through the changing room, trying not to panic. There's no divider, no screen, just people of all ages confidently existing in a cloud of hot mist and cultural comfort. You begin to disrobe, praying no one notices your very modern tan lines. Quirky tidbit: during certain festivals, Edo bathhouses offered scented steam days, where herbs like mugwort or yuzu were tossed into the water. These were believed to ward off illness and make your skin smell like a well-tended garden. Today, however, the scent is more robust, like boiling tree bark and mild panic. Ichiro hands you a wooden bucket and a bar of soap made from ash and rice bran. Scrub first, then soak, or the gods will frown. You obey. The water for rinsing is cold, like being slapped by a snow spirit, but it does the job. You scrub until your skin squeaks. Then, at last, you step into the bath. It is bliss. Liquid lava bliss. Your bones melt. Your joints sigh. Your scalp sings hallelujah in 3 octaves. You sink until only your nose and eyes are above water, staring at the ceiling's faint cracks like they hold the secrets of the universe. Ichiro lounges beside you. Better than canal water, right? Barely, you mumble, too relaxed to argue. People drift in and out, pausing for greetings, small talk, or dramatic retellings of who slipped on what turnip. You realize quickly that the bathhouse is as much about community as cleanliness. The Sento is a stage, a confessional, a neutral zone where even minor lords might share steam with fishmongers. Historians still argue whether the social equality of the bathhouse was genuine or just superficial. While status blurred in steam, certain rules still applied: different baths for genders, preferred times for the elite, and subtle hierarchies in towel folding techniques. As the steam curls around your ears, you find yourself eavesdropping on 2 old women debating whether the rain is a blessing or a punishment. "It feeds the rice," says one. "It ruins my laundry," counters the other. Both arguments seem equally valid. Eventually, your fingers prune, and Ichiro declares it time for tea and bean cakes. You dry off with your dignitarag and follow him to a side room where soft tatami mats and small cups await. You eat slowly, marveling at how something so simple, sweet bean paste inside a warm cake, can taste like it was invented by moon priests. Outside, the rain has returned. Naturally. But this time, it doesn't feel so hostile. You're clean, full, and slightly steamed. You let the droplets kiss your face without flinching. As you stroll home, you pass a group of apprentices scrubbing shopfronts with vinegar water. One of them waves. Another sneezes directly into a bucket. You salute their efforts and pick up your pace. The day drifts by like a low-hanging cloud. You help Ichiro patch a leaky window. You sweep the walkway with a bundle of reeds. You pause to watch a crow attempt to steal a full rice ball from an unattended lunchbox. It succeeds. Edo's crime rate just went up by 1. Later, as the sun dips behind the misty rooftops, Ichiro hands you something. A yukata, simple, indigo-dyed cotton, soft with age. It was my uncle's, he says. Didn't like sleeves. Cut them off. You wear it now. You slip it on. It smells faintly of smoke and cedar. It fits. You sit outside the shop, warm from your bath, wrapped in borrowed comfort, and watch the city wind down. Lanterns glow like sleepy fireflies. Laughter filters through the damp. A shamisen plucks a tune slow as moonlight. This moment, soft, ordinary, perfect, is yours. And you think, maybe you're not just surviving Edo anymore. Maybe, just maybe, you belong. The next morning, Edo is blanketed in a hush. Not silence, Edo doesn't do silence, but a kind of softness. The rain has pulled back to a lazy drizzle, and the streets glisten like they've been lacquered. The merchants are setting up slower today, and even the crows seem to be negotiating their cause to a respectable indoor voice. You shuffle outside in your new old yukata. The sleeves, well, lack thereof, give you a certain wild energy. Like you might challenge a tree to arm wrestling. Or start a tofu-based cult. Ichiro's already at work repairing the shop's Norn curtain. Today, he says, you learn how to deliver something without becoming a ghost. You blink. What? Errand. Across town. But if you're slow, people assume you died. Or that you're rude. Or both. He hands you a wrapped parcel, delicately folded cloth secured with hemp cord. It's light, smells faintly of dried persimmons, and will supposedly make you sweat like you've been carrying a cow uphill. Your destination? The home of a minor official who once studied poetry but now mostly yells about tax ledgers. The route? A snaking path through at least 3 districts, 1 unreliable bridge, and a market full of elbows. Mainstream fact, Edo's population during its peak in the 18th century rivaled London and Paris, with over 1 million residents. Streets buzzed with vendors, couriers, beggars, entertainers, samurai, and the occasional lost monkey. Navigating it required a keen sense of direction and, preferably, very pointy elbows. You begin your journey feeling optimistic. 10 minutes later, your optimism has been mugged by 2 pushy fishwives, a drunken poet, and a child who mistook you for a sweet potato. Every street has its own rhythm. One is full of cloth dyers, their fingers stained indigo. Another bustles with women buying tofu and arguing about whose husband is the most useless during storms. A dog follows you for half a block, then pees on your sandal. You take it personally. You cross the bridge, yes, the rickety one. Boards creak. A fisherman naps with a net over his face. You make it across, alive and only slightly damp. Then the market hits. You're swallowed by humanity, all chatter and shoulders and steam from bubbling vats. You dodge a man balancing lacquerware on his head. You sidestep a pickle barrel. You barely survive a close encounter with a live chicken. But you hold onto that parcel like it's the last dry sock in the world. Quirky tidbit, some Edo messengers used secret whistles or bird calls to alert shops of their approach. Not for stealth, but to avoid repeating formal greetings 20 times a day. You try one. A small flute-like chirp. Someone throws a rice cake at your head. Progress? Eventually, you arrive at the official's home, a well-tended structure with a manicured gravel path and a door guard who looks like he could snap your dreams in half. You bow. He raises one eyebrow. You hand over the parcel with both hands. There's a beat of silence. He takes it, nods, and vanishes behind the curtain. No thank you, no good job not falling in the river, not even a courtesy grunt. Edo, baby. You turn around and start the long walk back. Somehow, it's harder now. Your muscles ache from bracing against humanity. Your sandal still smells like dog. But the city feels different. Familiar, even. You recognize landmarks. You know which corners not to linger on. A noodle vendor calls out to you by name. Well, a name. It might be mop hair, but hey, it's something. Historians still argue whether the commoner class in Edo truly had mobility, social, not pedestrian. While merchants and craftsmen gained wealth and influence, the rigid caste system technically kept everyone in their place. But people whispered. Money moved. And sometimes, someone carrying persimmons to a taxman could begin to matter. You pause to rest on a bench carved from an old boat. A child nearby is balancing a teacup on their forehead. A cat watches with disdain. Ichiro finds you there. Didn't die. Impressive. Almost did, you reply. That counts as Edo living. He hands you a dango skewer, 3 sweet rice dumplings. Warm, soft, and slightly sticky. You eat in silence, watching the clouds move like slow swimmers across the sky. Back at the shop, you help hang lanterns for the evening. The light from each one flickers in the growing dusk, casting gentle shadows on the street. Somewhere nearby, drums begin to thump in slow rhythm. A festival? A practice session? A particularly enthusiastic neighbor? Who knows? Later, by candlelight, Ichiro teaches you how to fold paper into birds. Yours look more like startled frogs, but you nod solemnly as if this is intentional. The day winds down in size. You've survived another wet, bewildering, oddly poetic slice of Edo. You've delivered goods, dodged eels, and made it home without becoming a cautionary tale. The city is quiet now, its noise tucked under futons and dreams. You lie down, heart steady, breath slow. And just before sleep pulls you under, you realize you didn't think about leaving once today. The last full day creeps in gently, without fanfare or birdsong, just the soft plunk of water dripping from a neighbor's eaves. You lie on your mat, staring up at the ceiling's latticework, listening to the creaks of Edo waking up one wooden groan at a time. Ichiro, ever the cheerleader of your suffering, nudges your side with a bamboo stick. Special day. You're helping with the night watch. You blink. What? He tosses you a pair of thin straw sandals. City patrol. You'll see. Or rather, you won't see, because it'll be pitch dark and you'll trip over a fish cart. There's tea and rice, of course. There's always tea and rice. But today there's also a hush to the air, like the city is waiting for something. As if the buildings themselves are leaning in. The morning drizzles by. You fetch supplies for Ichiro, extra ink, some wood shavings, and a bucket that smells suspiciously of fermented turnips. You help a child fish her clog out of a muddy ditch. You watch a monkey in a vest steal a sweet bun from a vendor and vanish like mist. Mainstream fact, Edo maintained a form of community policing known as the Machibuggy system, essentially a magistrate-based structure where patrols kept peace at night, monitored fires, and ensured the city didn't quietly burst into chaos. Watchmen, often rotating from local guilds or shops, carried lanterns, wooden clappers, and a keen sense of who's who in the neighborhood. By sundown, Ichiro hands you a lantern with paper so thin it trembles when you breathe. Don't break it. These cost more than your whole face. You're partnered with a carpenter named Ueda. He smells like cedar and stale bin paste and has the voice of someone who's seen a man die from slipping on steamed daikon. He gives you a nod that says, "Stay out of my way or I'll write a passive-aggressive poem about you." You head out into the night. The rain has finally stopped, leaving puddles that reflect lantern light like molten gold. The alleys are still, the shops shuttered. Somewhere, someone plays a flute slow enough to turn your blood into syrup. You wrap wooden clappers together, Hayoshigi, at the start of the block. It's less dramatic than you expect. You hoped for a satisfying crack, but yours sound like angry chopsticks. Ueda sighs and takes over. His rhythm is ancient, practiced, almost hypnotic. Tap tap. Pause. Tap tap. Like a heartbeat echoing through the city's bones. Quirky tidbit: some Edo patrols carried bells instead of clappers, or sang chants to announce their presence, especially during fire season. The idea was to calm the neighborhood and gently remind anyone thinking of committing crimes that sleepy justice was still justice. As you walk, Ueda points out quiet details: which shutters are newer, whose house has a dog that never barks, which merchant mysteriously always has dry feet. You learn a city by how it sleeps, he murmurs. At one crossroad, you encounter a man hauling bundles of firewood on his back. He nods, says nothing, and disappears into the darkness. Another corner reveals a shrine with a fox statue half swallowed by ivy. You light incense, just in case. Historians still argue whether night patrols in Edo were truly effective or more symbolic. Some records suggest entire patrols would stop for sake halfway through and nap behind storage barrels. Others swear that vigilant watchmen prevented countless burglaries, fires, and rival gang scuffles. You turn down a narrow lane and almost trip over a cat so fat it looks like it absorbed an entire futon. It hisses once and vanishes under a storehouse. Near the riverbank, you stop for tea with another patrol pair. The teacups are chipped, the biscuits stale, but the conversation is warm. They tell stories, some real, some definitely not, about ghosts in alleys and kabuki actors disguising themselves to avoid taxes. One man insists he once saw a carp spirit offer someone a coin. No one questions it. On the walk back, Edo feels different. As if you've seen its secret face, the one it only shows at night, beneath lantern glow and sleeping dogs. The city is quieter now, less theatrical. You spot tiny details: a basket of dried herbs hung under an eave, a child's sandal drying on a stick, a cat curled in a paper delivery pouch. At the shop, Ichiro's asleep sitting up, mouth open, a scroll hanging from one hand. You place the lantern by the door, careful not to wake him. The candle inside flickers its last breath. You lie down. The yukata crinkles softly under your limbs. Your toes are sore, your knees creak, and something bit your neck again. But your chest is full of warmth, of stories, of moments collected like pebbles in your sleeve. Edo breathes around you. A city teetering between rain and rhythm, chaos and calm. You close your eyes. And sleep takes you like a quiet tide. Now, just ease into the quiet. The story has slowed, the lanterns have all gone dim, and Edo, rain-soaked and radiant, is finally asleep. Let your breath match its rhythm. In and out. Like the flow of the Sumida River, gentle, unhurried, wrapping the city in silence. You've wandered its alleyways, tasted its fireside sweets, and stumbled through its markets like a visitor from dreams. You've seen a world stitched together with straw sandals and ink-stained fingers, where life pressed forward even under clouds that never seemed to dry. You didn't just survive the rainy day, you learned how to drift with it. So now, settle deeper. Let your limbs grow heavy, like they've been wrapped in warm cotton. Let the distant clack of wooden clappers fade to nothing. Let the images soften, the paper doors, the shadowy corners, the flicker of candlelight behind someone's soft laughter. There's no more to carry, no more to chase. Just the memory of mist and the promise of sleep. Let your body melt into the quiet. Let Edo slip away, like steam rising from a bathhouse roof. Good night, traveler. Rest well.